Bonjour mes amis. Welcome to my descent to madness. Sorry, my tongue slipped. I mean my in-depth analysis and breakdown of the game and its lore. Clair Expedition Obscur 33. Just making sure you're awake. I'm not exactly the energetic type. If you do fancy a nap, I have an absolute banger of hours of writing my first fanfic chapter, which I split in 2 parts, because no sane person would sit through that. Put a pin in that for now. Back to camp. Game of the year, which I can't seem to get out of my head now. Expedition 33 is an experience as you follow the leader, Alan Wake. No, just Alan, who likes to age shame old men. Before I continue, I should make a few disclaimers. There will be spoilers ahead. This video will have the same content warnings as the game, namely gore, strong language, and violence. Some emotional themes could be triggering, dealing with loss, suicidal thoughts, and grief. With the red tape out of the way, we continue. Alas, interrupting this transmission is a suited man with a cane blocking access for those who know not that they have not yet played the game. I can't stress enough, if you have not yet experienced this game, you are missing out on a masterpiece. Go and enjoy it before you come back so we can throw rocks and cry together. It's better to have a rock and lose it than to never have had a rock at all. Some top tier SKA wisdom right there. And who is SKA, you might ask? If you are still here and you don't know that, go play the game. Seriously, you don't want to ruin this once in a lifetime experience with spoilers. Ignore any social media, forums, etc. Complete the game, then come back. So back to the fellow connoisseurs. I present to you my thesis on Clair Obscur Expedition 33. I would have put in timestamps, but my handle on social media is as strong as Gustav's arm in Act 2 and 3. By this point I've probably lost the only viewer having said that statement. Though I will say Gustav was my favourite character in the game, and I did semi-quit after Act 1. I had to take a few weeks hiatus before attempting to continue in the hopes his arm would return. If some knowledgeable writer could add in some timestamps for those who come after, it would be tight. My video editing skills are also more woo than wee, but I do like writing, and hopefully the banter and my beautiful mug make more up for it. I did enjoy Black Coffee's video on iceberg mysteries, which is why I wanted to do this video in levels, almost like walking down multiple stories of stairs into the abyss. I did stumble on some cliffs. For one, I didn't realize how bankrupting commissioning a soundtrack and creating a thumbnail fan art for it was. If I tried to draw a picture of the characters myself, it would look more like a Pictos. And my musical ability is so subliminal that Sophie ascended to another plane listening to it. So massive thanks to Roger Magrià for creating a custom 33-minute, 33-second soundtrack for me. Absolute legend when all I asked for was a 2-minute loopable track. Though it's up to the viewer to guess the original OST is based off of. And thank you to Logan Arts for creating the amazing masterpiece I'm using as my thumbnail. Hopefully in time for this video to go live. Whilst we are discussing credits, how did we get here? I was originally just looking for inspiration and understanding the lore for my fanfic, but stumbled into gems. Namely Black Coffee and Professor Curie, which inspired me to do my own video. And I did find many others like The Odd Broadcaster and Kyle's Reeves, who were similarly inspired by these legends. On a slight note, best of luck to Master Sam on his upcoming book, and I hope Behind the Voice shares more of his horror stories in a creative medium. Further to this, I've enjoyed the game and want to see more about the faces. Sorry, my mistake. Further to this, if you've enjoyed the game and want to see more about the faces behind them, there are a lot of wonderful interviews. And if you do notice this is a bit janky, I'm just switching between slides that I've got to record separately and what I've got to say. So I'm kind of multitasking. Kind of a bit like Verso there. Right, so here you should now be seeing a few references of interviews you can also go visit if you'd like to see more about what goes behind the scenes. And a final tangent, I promise. Thanks a million to the legend who posted about ticket availability to the concert in Nimes. I was so bugged out that I couldn't get any for London, and now I have an excuse to visit France too. Hope they have a shop as well at the concert, because I did hear they would have one in London. But yeah, we'll see about that. And now back on topic. To fit the soundtrack, this will be a series. Instead of one long form video, we'll split it into different segments, each episode symbolizing deeper descent into the madness. So it will be like each video will focus on one theme, and then we go further and further into the abyss. Well, the proverbial abyss. Of course, I have to spread them apart by 3.3 days to keep in theme with the Expedition 33 theme. And of course, it gives me a bit more time to edit if needed. So yeah, and if you haven't noticed already, I'm posting on the 33rd day of the new year. So happy new year. And it's at 7:53 p.m, which is an Easter egg from the game. Speaking of time, I haven't been able to complete my full run for New Game Plus yet, so I don't have everything in video. And for some reason, when I've tried recording it, it's done, well, I don't have the greatest machine here, but it's done frame by frame. So I've got 1 FPS videos, so I can't use those because I'm missing content, and in some segments I'm missing complete content. But I guess that's another excuse to play New Game 2 Plus after this. So far I've only got to just before the Axons. I've taken a slight detour, gone into Renoir's draft, and now I'm fighting Simon. Sorry, I'm not great with names if it's not clear already. I didn't put this in the script because I was still playing until last minute. I was hoping to speed run as much of it as possible. I hadn't done Simon in the first playthrough. I didn't do much side content. I was more focused on the story. Well, the game doesn't signpost you really. It's more open world, which I guess fits into how the game's styled. So yeah, with the clock ticking, I've now got another 3.3 days to get through as much as possible, and hopefully I'll be able to complete my run by the next video. So that's enough waffle for now. Wouldn't want this first episode to be over before I even say anything about the game. So, starting with level 0, ground floor. So this is where you start off getting into Clair Obscur Expedition 33. You're just your normal, everyday, casual player, same as I was, with a smile on my face. Then I stumbled on a game on Xbox Game Pass last year, which looked different from the usual titles. I usually have a look through the list, read the descriptions, and then give a game a go to see what it's a bit like. And effectively, I'm going in blind into the game. I first thought it was going to be a heavily dialogue-based game. I've been playing a lot of supermassive games recently, so I thought it might be one of those where the choices alter the ending. So yeah, I was in for a surprise when I started hearing the amazing soundtrack and started getting into the fights. Going into a bit more of a side note, I didn't really understand much about Chroma, Pictos or Lumina from the introduction. I thought the city was important and the whole game would be based in the city, so I was talking to a lot of NPCs. I must have missed something as I didn't realize the expedition meant leaving the island. Sorry, pronunciation, words. And let me put this on mute because I've got some videos playing and I want to get the timing right. So when I've got hopefully to the left of me, I'm going to insert the slideshow and hopefully it will be in sync with what I'm saying. So back to Clair Obscur. So I did enjoy the city of Lumiere, but I did rage quit after seeing the monstrosity that is the mine when you start out. Whatever the benefit of winning that fight was not worth it for me, so I stepped aside for that one. Next, Sophie emerged, and I was like, damn, is Gustav going to try and revive her? And in that scene, it was quite poetic to see when Gustav kneeled. You've got two people wallowing in their grief, facing each other as enemies. And then in the next area, I've got to go back, I've gone too forward. I kept trying to play the card game before realizing my character would never play that card game. I saw another NPC offering haircuts. I thought it would be interesting to give the haircut thing a go, but I ended up with a reality check. If I could have thrown hands, I would have, because I regretted wasting the tokens. I thought there were a limited number of tokens you would end up with, and you had to choose which people you would go to. Normal gaming style, right? However, I was lucky in the sense that you could get more tokens and then visit all the other vendors as well. And that was a breath of relief for me. And then next, I fought Mael until I beat her, and then listened to Emma, who gave a very Attack on Titan style speech. And after that, we set sail into the distance. I was really excited at this point. It seemed we would go on a nice adventure. Maybe I would be able to interact with other NPCs on the ship. Could I be able to control the ship? That was the thoughts going on inside my head at that time. So that's what I was thinking about, but maybe I was a bit too optimistic. I should have realized I was in for a treat. And I found that out the moment we landed on the beach and Alan was hit with a sideways guillotine. My jaw dropped in sync with Gustav's. In my head, Gustav had an O-shaped face, opened in shock, but going back and revisiting it, maybe I exaggerated that in my head, because that was the scene I was looking for as a thumbnail, because I thought it would really pop. But maybe it was the Mandela effect, and I remembered it wrong. Maybe in the moment it seemed more dramatic than there it was. Yeah, and then I thought it might be Attack on Titan style. Sorry, I like to reference a lot of different things because that's how my brain works. And I thought maybe the outside people outside of Lumiere don't like the people trapped inside Lumiere, and then they've got their own sort of rivalry going on. And when I looked a bit closer at the attacker's face, who we later find out is Renoir, I felt it looked a bit like Gustav, and I felt the same illusion many others did at the same time, who thought there might be some time travel plot. And then another comparison, kind of like, I believe it's Death Stranding, which has that kind of thing going on, but I might be wrong. I might have a different game. There's so many Hideo Kojima games to get through. They've all got very intricate plots, but I'm going on a tangent again. So yeah, so more and more people started to get wiped out by the attack. We see Neverons attacking us at what I started calling at that point the beach, but I later find out that's not the only beach, so it's called Dark Shores. I called it the beach because that's where we landed the ships. So yeah, at that point I thought maybe this was going to be one of those games where we see the initial characters going back to Supermassive games. Sometimes you play the prequel bit, whether you play as the characters who die, and then you go back and you go in a time skip and play as new characters. So I thought it might be similar to that, and we're going to end up playing as Expedition 32, because we did meet Bastien, who would be the leader of Expedition 32 in Lumiere. However, luckily it didn't turn out like that. And then something else I missed at the time was you do see a snapshot in the chaos of Verso saving Mael, which is a nice attention to detail right there. And then in the next sequence you see Gustav wake up, and it's an only survivor kind of situation, and I'm thinking, okay, it's a one-man army, we can do this. We don't need anyone else. We have a strong arm and a gun. We can go on and do this. However, he then put on that gun to his head, and I jumped back to my assumption that we were going to return to Lumiere. However, fortunately, Lune came to the rescue, At that moment, she was the GOAT, my second most favourite character for saving Gustav. It felt like an emotional roller coaster. From my perspective, she became the decision maker, more active leader in Alan's absence. She gave Gustav the push he needed to focus back on the purpose that they were here for and what they were fighting for. And then that camp dialogue was Chef's Kiss, where she says, "For those who come," no, yeah. We continue. I'm getting my dialogues mixed up. There's so many amazing dialogues in this game. So yeah, and then the next part we come across this message, which looks a bit dodgy. However, at that point I was thinking, is this a trap? It is a very trap-esque kind of situation. But it did make sense why Gustav would want to pursue the lead. We saw in the intro how close Gustav and Mael were. He already has lost Sophie, and then at the beach he's lost so many other colleagues and friends. It made sense for him to not want to lose Mael too. It seemed like wanting to save her became his new motivation and reason to live after he almost came close to self-harm. And he was hesitant to let her join the expedition at first. When you do the dialogue in Lumiere, when you're talking to Emma, he does mention this. However, he has taken it upon himself to be the guardian of Mael whilst they're out on this expedition as well. So logically, he wouldn't want her to be in any danger. And then moving on, following the trail, we end up at the manor where we find Mael. Now at this point, I wasn't even paying attention to Mael. I was looking at that glowing journal behind her and trying to figure out how I could get that. Because once the dialogue finished and I went there, it had disappeared. And I thought maybe it's a glitch. So I left the location and came back to try and get it. I tried a few other different things, but they didn't work. So I then left it be, thinking, okay, if I can't get it, then can't get it, right? But it didn't click until a lot later that was Mael's diary or journal that she herself is writing, so it's not something we can collect. And then we meet the curator, who also looks very suspicious, especially when he blocks the path right in front of you, right? But he does teach you this nifty little trick of jumping. And I left my guard down at this point because I thought, oh, okay, maybe it's that kind of situation where we've met someone who's actually trying to help us. Where am I? Right, I was kicking myself for it later in hindsight. But yeah, I did trust the curator at that point in time. And then a little later, we meet Goglu, and he didn't seem like he wanted to harm us. And Miles somehow communicated with him. I thought she might have a hidden ability, being able to talk to Nevrons like a monster tamer, but I was a bit disappointed when we went on a bit later and ended up fighting other Nevrons and she didn't use that ability. It's only later I figured out the reason why, but at that point I thought, does she have an ability that she's not fully utilizing? And then continuing in the sequence of events, we end up at Gestrel Village. It's a really fun place with a lot of fun references, like the dog sipping tea in the house on fire, and a few others, right? And then we end up speaking to Golgra, who looks like a mafia boss, with henchmen on the sides doing push-ups to intimidate us. The battles were fun, and we run into another survivor, Seal, in the arena, who I didn't really like at start, because she seemed a bit more selfish when I'm comparing her to Lune, because Lune ventured out to find others at the gathering place and to try and continue the expedition, whereas Seal didn't even really try going to the rally point. She just completely given up on the mission and was fine with living in this village for the rest of her life. However, it's only later you find out about Seal's backstory and why she wasn't so inclined to continue with the expedition. And then next we meet the legend Esquier, who is great. He really livens the mood, and I almost burst out laughing when he said Francois was next door. I did nearly fall to Francois' greatest ice attack. I thought he would move or actually be quite fast or something and he'd be able to eliminate the whole party. But I was just overthinking things. We do end up, however, going to find the rock. And I did find it funny that we need a rock when we clearly see him fly in. And it seems like SKA is just being difficult for our party. And then my brain, being my brain, felt like he might be a hidden boss or someone who, when we give the rock, it's part of his evil plan or something, and he has a power up, and then we have to fight him. But yeah, that was just me overthinking things. Nothing like that happens. However, what does happen at the end of Act 1, I was gutted. I thought there was no way this was meant to happen. There must be a way to beat Renoir. Maybe I failed the fight, kind of like Until Dawn, where characters can die because of mistakes, so you missed a QTE. Or maybe in this case, I haven't done the best of my ability to defeat Renoir, which is why he's ended up unaliving Gustav. I'm not sure how censorship works on YouTube, so we'll try and keep it as simple as possible. At this point I was thinking, I'm going to restart this game and try to get Gustav alive. I don't want any party members leaving the party permanently. So I had a look online before I did that, just to make sure that I could somehow save Gustav. However, I ended up in disappointment and found that this was meant to happen. This was not something you can change. And I pretty much quit here for a few weeks. And then a few weeks later, I started thinking, you know what, I've started this game, maybe I should finish it, see how it ends, and complete this journey that I've set on. Similar to the expeditioners, right? They've started on this expedition, they need to see it through to completion. And then we see a replacement for Verso pop up almost immediately, who I immediately hated. I didn't like how he was replacing Gustav with all his weapons and equipment. I didn't play with him or Ciel because, as I mentioned earlier, I didn't really think she was the kind to care about the rest of the party. I thought she was more selfish and a bit of a coward. So my main three, as you can probably guess now, were Monaco, Lune, and Mayao. And then after Act 1, trying to speed things along, I'm not sure how I'm doing on time here, we run into this annoying sword guy after burying Gustav, who reminded me very much of Dark Souls, but I did manage to defeat him after a bit of a struggle. I'm not that great at the parry system, in games in general, but I do love playing them. So next stop on the Disaster Expedition Express, Monaco Station, where we meet a battle junkie who collects feet. I love this guy, but I thought he was a completely different species. I didn't clock in until later when it's mentioned that he was a gestural. I didn't quite get the paintress heart bit in the story as well. I was thinking it can't be a physical heart, right? And even now I still don't know what that was, or maybe it was one of Verso's lies. But yeah, moving onwards and upwards, we fight the two Axons, and this is just about where I am in New Game Plus. But yeah, when I played it originally, I just followed the instructions. Like a good expeditioner, I gave both the Chroma Hearts, I believe, from the Axons to the Curator and got a magical sword out of it. And then we were ready to go fight the Paintress. However, the Paintress seems immortal, and I thought, this is it. Our game's over. Was the whole journey futile? Was anything worth it? Maybe I shouldn't have picked up the game again after Act 1. However, she for some reason lets us into her monolith. I didn't understand at the time why. It didn't make any sense, but I took it as it was. We then go on to defeat the Paintress, and I thought maybe Mael is being set up to become the new paintress. Watching shows like Loki, where you believe the person is evil, however it turns out they're keeping the world alive or some larger threat at bay. But nothing happened at that time. We go back to Lumiere and we're celebrating. I thought this wasn't too bad for an end, at least until we see Gustav's apprentices again, and the game really rubs his death in your face. But the game seems to think you don't have enough trauma just yet. So right in front of your face, all of Lumiere is erased, and you as the player can do nothing about it. Next, Maëlle is shown to sleep with her shoes on, and we meet the Descendro family learning the truth of the world. A real Matrix moment. I don't like how we don't know much about the outside world. I tried leaving the mansion, but we can't do that, and parts of the mansion are walled off. I would have really loved trying to jump through the painting which leads to the hidden room for the dogs, and I did find it interesting that both worlds work kind of in harmony, where you've got the painters who are immersed in painting the canvas, but in the real world they're frozen in place. So it's not like you've got duplication of events going on, they're in sync with one another, although there is a time difference or time dilation effect, if you will. Back to Lumiere, we confront Renoir, but we have to run away because we're not strong enough to defeat him, and we've already lost Lune and Ciel, so we're only down to effectively one party member, Maëlle, because Verso doesn't seem to be doing much at that point. He's more accepting the events as they come through. Did we have any chance to fight Renoir at all? It seemed that way until Maëlle grabs Lune and Ciel's essence, as she calls it at the time, and revives them, which even in that moment I didn't believe was actual revival. And I haven't changed my mind on that element yet. But they did discuss raising a ghost army from the Nevron Chroma. So the Chroma kept by the Nevrons who've trapped the Chroma in the bodies of the expeditioners. And then we have our second attempt of facing Renoir. We still seem to be in a very difficult position against him and his Axons until Aline comes to the rescue. I was fully cheering her on at this point, however she kind of disappears straight after. I was really upset, thinking, why is she dealing with the Axons, or what is she doing? She should be helping us take out the main dude. But after we defeat Renoir, we still don't see Aline in the canvas anymore. So I was curious, what happened to her? Was she ejected at any point, and why we don't see that? It seemed very weird, but I do now have some theories on it. But let's put a pin in that. We've got more videos to come to discuss more of these elements which don't quite seem to click. But after this, we get to endgame. You make your choice on which ending to pick. And that, I believe, is a good spot to end this video. I think I'm doing about tight for time at this point. I'm sorry, I can't really see the time. I should have put bigger slits for the eyes and the mask, because I'm struggling a bit. You might have noticed it in the video, or you might be imagining this. That's the kind of premise that the game comes to you with. What is real? How do you define what is real and what is fake? And this is our point for the next video. How do the souls of the people in the canvas work? And that's it for now. I should have really googled the word for bye in French, because I started with bonjour. Adios, isn't it? But I'll try and find it for the next one.